Hey everybody, I'm so sorry I cannot bless you all with my live presence, but we're gonna make it work today. It's so nice to be back. I'm so happy that we finally have a name. When I didn't even honestly need to look at the other options we were going through, as soon as I saw CCU, I was like, dude, that sounds. We need to trademark that. That's awesome. But it's official. We're like slowly but surely becoming like a full on serious thing. It's great.
Oh
Good to be
man,
back.
yeah, it's definitely great to be back. And now that we're here, okay, I'm gonna just say we're gonna go straight into it because we missed last week as far as Loki, and I didn't dive into it on my last podcast last Friday, but I am going to let's dive into before we get into the finale. Let's kind of go into episode 5, if that's cool.
That sounds awesome.
Ah,
Episode 5, I think, is by far my favorite one.
yeah,
I
yeah, yeah,
I've
definitely.
rewatched it.
Mm-hmm.
It is so much fun. I think it was on our last little pod where I talked about how I think this episode 5 was going to basically go immediately after that end credit scene of episode 4, which it did.
Yeah.
And that it was going to be very action packed, whereas like the finale was going to be a little bit more like, all right, let me explain to you all this stuff we just showed y'all.
Mm-hmm.
But no, episode 5 was like filled with a whole bunch of just a lot of juicy
Oh,
things, a lot of
definitely, definitely.
really satisfying things.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, let's start there.
Let's start with because when we spoke last, we ended talking about episode 4 and the after credit scene of seeing the multiple Loki. So that's where episode 5 picks up, and from there, I like to throw you a question. So just based off of what we've seen so far, um, do you believe there's just an infinite amount of Lokis out there?
I mean, at this point, I think that's pretty safe to assume, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we saw a whole, I mean, apart from the four main ones that we saw in
Right.
episode 5,
Mm-hmm.
we saw like a whole army of them led by like President Loki, which I
Right.
loved. So no, for sure. I think we can definitely say that. I think the same is true for any character we look at. Again, this is where I'm going to put my little 2 cents.
Mm-hmm.
Spider-Man, Spideyverse is going to happen.
Right. Right. Do you oh, with that, just quick, real quick, I actually just looking at initially when I first saw episode 5, uh, and then I saw, I guess, President Loki. I honestly didn't realize that all of those were Loki variants. I thought it was just one Loki variant that had his own army at first, but like I guess Mobius mentioned before, they all come in different shapes and forms and stuff like that. So that is safe to assume, I guess, on my part, that they were all low key variants, right?
Yes, that's what it seems to be. So no, for sure. They were all Loki variants, and it kind of adds to the whole like we have alligator Loki, we have
Mm-hmm.
Sylvie, obviously. So they all come in all shapes and forms, and then he's a shapeshifter. So it
Yeah.
makes
Yeah.
total
Yeah.
sense that they all look totally different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. And one of the things that I was actually kind of tickled by in that episode was alligator Loki biting the hand off of presidential Loki or whatnot. That was actually pretty hilarious, just because all in all, I wasn't really expecting much. Like I didn't know what to expect from alligator Loki, but with that, that was just something that I don't know. I busted out laughing when I saw.
You see, this episode tickled me many times. And that was definitely one of them. That scene was just so chaotic. And I think
Yeah.
honestly that was my favorite scene of the episode is just seeing all of them come together. And then
Mm-hmm.
our Loki, right? Like the main character
Right.
Loki, just seeing all of them just be very Loki-esque, where
Right.
they're all betraying
Each
and then they're
other.
all surprised.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then they're
Yeah.
all surprised that
Mm-hmm.
they're betraying, and he's kind of like cringing in the corner. That was a really satisfying moment. And
Yeah.
Alligator Loki definitely played his part. He
Right.
played his part. He gave us a lot of little juicy moments.
And
I loved when he was in the little kiddie pool, and they're like, I think they're like feeding him like he's drinking wine. I
right.
don't know.
Right.
When they're all sharing their Nexus events. So no,
Mm-hmm.
he played his part very well.
So tell me, because I didn't really look too much into it on the internet, but as like we were going underground, I thought I saw a tiny Thor in a jar, and I didn't understand what that was at first. So kind of tell us, or actually just tell me, because I'm sure the rest of the universe knows what that was. Kind of break that down real quick.
Sure. So that was basically a cameo of Throg, right? Frog Thor.
Mm-hmm.
And so he has like a short comic like story lineup that happens, and it's just entertaining.
Yeah.
And I don't know too much about the details of the comic themselves, but something that was really cool is that if you listen closely, you hear the frog like grunting. It kind of reflects that scene in Avengers where Thor is trying to break out of that little like prison that was meant for Hulk.
Right.
And apparently, those grunts and little noises were actually voiced by
Chris.
Chris
Oh, Chris
Hemsworth.
Hemsworth.
So
Really?
that
Wow.
is, yeah, for that tiny little role. But yes, so it's based off an actual like comic storyline.
I feel like, and that's where my confusion lies, because say actually I heard the voice and it was I thought it was him, but I honestly thought it was him like a miniature version of him. Like I didn't think it was the frog version. I thought somehow he got trapped in the jar underground and couldn't get out. Because I heard the voice and I was like, that sounded like Chris Hemsworth. It sounded like Thor, but I just couldn't tell.
It was just the
Yeah.
detail on this episode. You can also see like a buried Mjolnir because I guess just
Yeah. Yeah.
many of
Yeah.
them have
Mm-hmm.
been,
Yep.
sent to the void.
Yeah.
There are a lot of little details. And when you see, what is it, Thanos and his helicopter,
Yeah.
you little tiny things that are like kind of like callbacks to the comics, and I
Yeah.
think that's where they're having a lot of fun because it's kind of like sky's the limit at this point because they're
Right.
introducing the idea of the multiverse. They're adding in a lot of things that don't necessarily need to have like a strong storyline for us
Mm-hmm.
to receive it. It's just kind of just Easter eggs. They're little
Right.
candies thrown into a really great episode.
Mm-hmm. So that actually no, I don't even want to get there yet because we're eventually gonna get there. But back to episode five. One thing that I kind of took, well, everybody took notice of was like, say, now Sylvie's back in this void and she eventually gets back with Loki. Oh, and side note, I wasn't expecting to see Mobius. I was super excited. I thought he like officially died, but he made it through. Yeah, so so shout
I
out
had
to
no
him.
doubts. I had no doubts. As I
Yeah,
was taking notes for this episode, I think I was like maybe 15 minutes in, and then I was like, okay, but where's Mobius? I need to
right,
see Mobius in the next. If I don't see him in this episode, I'm gonna flip because then you would have to assume that maybe he just didn't make it.
right.
And then like a few minutes later, our boy shows up, and I was just like, yes.
Yeah, but just to say, I guess now you see on the screen in this episode the chemistry kind of blossoming between Loki and Sylvie. You know, it was like they were happy to see each other. You know, in the void. You know, and with that, it was like, all right, so is this about to be like a love story or something like that? You know, like
Yeah.
what's really going on, and can a love story happen between two of the same character? You know, so that this is where things it could get a little confusing as far as the writing and what can actually happen, but anybody can do whatever in this universe, you know. So I'm just curious to see. Well, I will see in the next episode. We'll go over it in a second, but like I was curious just to see where this was going to go, if it was actually going to happen, you know.
Man, let it get confusing. Let it get weird. I'm all for it.
Right.
I like in episode 5, I think that's when it started kind of tipping because I think before that it was still kind of 50-50 of like, okay, they can make this romantic. They can just make it what it is and
Yeah.
just leave it alone.
Mm-hmm.
I am happy that they did make that plunge and make it more of a romantic story. Two frost giants like needing to be cuddled in a blanket. Oh
Yeah.
no, like
Yeah.
we knew it was like starting to tip to that scale of like it's gonna be a romantic thing. A
Yeah.
lot of people are a little upset about it, right? I've seen a lot of people online where they're like, oh, I don't like it. They should have just left it be like a symbolism of like self-love, and I think it
Right.
still is. Like I
Yeah.
think you can, that doesn't take away from the fact that this is Loki learning to love himself as
Right.
much it is as much it is for him learning to love another person, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
you see it come out through the entire series where she says it or other people say it, but Sylvie isn't exactly Loki. She's like her
She
own
never, she
person.
never really went through the Loki experience on Asgard. Like she never really had any interactions with like Thor as far as like the adventures that they went on and the bad stuff that happened with the Avengers or Thanos or anything like that. So being that she was taken at a super young age, she lived her life the way that she wanted to. That wasn't along with the sacred timeline, you know. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I loved the scene. It was like 10 minutes into the episode, and I forget which Loki asked our Loki, like,
mm-hmm.
did you leave your glorious purpose behind? And there was like a little pause, and you saw it in his face, and he didn't need to say it for us to know like who
Yeah,
he was thinking of. But in my heart, I'm like, yeah, boy, that's who you're like, you love her. And then he
right.
says it, I'm like, yes. I'm
Mm-hmm.
I'm all for it. I just love the chemistry that they have on screen. And I love seeing Loki finally find that for himself because he's been like a loved character for so long. And I think we've all wanted to see him finally be happy. And I don't want to start diving into episode 6 just yet, but I think it was really nice seeing it like really come to fruition, even though it wasn't, we'll save that once we get into episode 6. But no, it
Right.
was I'm all for it. And for the people who don't really like the whole love story between Loki and Sylvie, Loki
Mm-hmm.
is a weird person.
Yeah.
He's a weird character in mythology. He's a weird character in the MCU. Like let him just be. It's fine. This is
Right.
fine. Like go with the flow. It's going to get even crazier and it doesn't lose the fact that this is still a symbol of self-love. Like
Right.
it doesn't take that away from that at all.
So, like, say, with that aside, because I know at the end of episode 4, he was pretty much about to, I guess, like confess, like I guess his
His
feelings
love.
before, yeah,
Yeah.
before he got pruned or whatnot. And with that being said, and as far as the events of episode 4 and episode 5, I just want to uh, ask you a question in terms of the Loki that we know right now to this point. This variant Loki.
Hmm.
Would you say that you like this Loki better than the MCU Sacred Timeline Loki?
I really love that you asked me this because honestly, I do. And
Okay.
this is why. The reason I'm really loving this variant of Loki is because we're seeing his story arc in a much more intimate way than what we did in the Sacred Timeline, if you will,
Mhm. Mhm.
version of Loki. Because we still see, I think you see that big turn in Ragnarok, right? Because
Yeah.
that's where we really see him kind of, what's the word? Re-accept himself in the family of like Thor
Mhm.
and acknowledge Thor as his brother, all of that. But I think in this case, we're seeing him in a lot of different lenses that we wouldn't normally see him.
Yeah.
I was sharing with someone earlier this week that in the Sacred Timeline, right, like the
Mhm.
MCU we've seen thus far,
Yeah.
we've only seen little glimpses of that illusion, if you will, that he's been kind of portraying as a defense mechanism. We've
Mhm.
only seen it down a very small handful of times. Like the only one that really comes to mind is the scene in Dark World, right?
Yeah.
Thor
That's what I
Dark
was about to
World,
say. Yeah.
where, yeah, in prison, right? Because Thor comes to visit him after his mom's or their mom's death, and there's like this whole a literal illusion of him just being totally fine. I don't care. She was never my mom. The
Right.
moment that Thor leaves, you just see him so broken. Like
Mhm.
everything, I think when he got the news, right, it reflects back to when he got the news and he just throws everything. That's where you see him be able to, what's the word? His kinetic powers or whatever.
Mhm. Yeah.
But that's like one of the very few moments I can say we see the full illusion come off and you see a glimpse of what's really underneath.
Yeah.
In the show, because this is his story and we do see him alone a lot,
Mhm.
you see that happen a lot more times.
Yeah.
And I think he understands himself a lot more at the end of, just in the finale. Like I think
Mhm.
by the Loki we saw in episode 1 and the Loki we saw in episode 6 are it's such a huge growth. And I think the Loki that we
Definitely.
know in the sacred timeline would
Mhm.
probably have gotten there eventually if, he wasn't killed off in Infinity War.
Right.
But it's so nice seeing him in this an intimate way because I think I'll kind of dive into it more once we get into episode 6, but there's a lot of different places where you see potential for him to revert back to his old self, and I was
Yeah.
kind of on edge like, no, 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 you did so well.
Right.
And he didn't. like he didn't revert. He kind
Mm-hmm.
of stuck with that, like, I'm gonna be vulnerable. I'm gonna like put myself out there in this position and just kind of stick with it. So I'm excited to see how that continues in season two.
Well, say like just going back to MCU Loki real quick. Say with that Loki that we know, it didn't really get until Ragnarok to where we never saw what's Thor's dad's name again?
Odin?
Yeah, Odin. Like we didn't really see him like accept Loki. You know what I'm saying? As like a son like that. Like say when it came down towards the end of World where he got the news of Loki passing, it was just like he seemed like he was hurt like briefly, but like it was, I feel like Ragnarok when it came down to like Odin calling them collectively his sons, you know, that, and that
Mm-hmm.
I feel like with that may have opened up the doorway to Loki being, I guess, a better character, like kind of like throwing his old ways or pushing them to the back. You get what I'm saying? Because it's from that where he just got accepted by Odin, but then not quite by Thor, and then we can say the whole movie of Ragnarok was, I guess, a growth for Thor to eventually accept Loki at the end of the movie, you know? So we ended up seeing Loki become, I guess, a good Loki in the MCU. But fast forward to this series, I feel like he got propelled to being a better Loki in a shorter amount of time. You know what I'm saying? So
Yes. Yes.
we get to see, yes, that growth and all the arcs, the character arcs and all that, and it's come to the point to where, as far as my question to you, my answer to that question was, being that we saw this in 6 episodes, this growth, I feel like I was able to connect with him more. You know what I'm saying? I was able to like this Loki more than what we saw in the sacred timeline, if that makes sense.
Oh no, absolutely. And I think also the reason this was so like what's the word? So fast paced, this
Mm-hmm.
development, right? Because we've seen this emerge in a 6 episode series more obviously quicker than the past 10 years that it took the other Loki to get to that same place.
Yep.
And I think it's because he has no choice but to face it, right? Like he sees an episode, I think it's episode 1 or 2, I forget which one, where he sees the movie of himself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like what would
Mm-hmm.
have happened post New York.
Yeah.
And so he's forced to confront, well, what his life would have become, right? And to acknowledge that this is what he wanted, right?
Yeah.
When Thor tells him, or when he sees Thor tell him, I thought the world of you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like if you see his face, I feel like he's acknowledging something that maybe he still hadn't really processed. Because
Right.
if you think of it, right, this is immediately post New York.
Right.
The events of New York were really like brought to fruition of a Loki who just feels like he was taught to hate himself
Right.
and that he's not, it's just a whole identity issue. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he at that point had processed any of it. But then seeing himself like in future version, like forced him to see it. And in episode 4, when he's in that time loop, I think he does it even more. And he kind
Yeah.
of we get to hear him kind of call it out, like, I'm a narcissist, I do this because
Right.
I don't want to be alone,
Mm-hmm.
right? So he's
Mm-hmm.
kind of forced to do it. And then in episode 5 he does it even further by seeing a whole room of Lokis do exactly what he's done for so
Yeah.
long,
Yeah.
and to realize that he doesn't actually want the throne was
Mm-hmm.
just kind of, you know I guess just a way to surround himself by people. I'm not too sure, but it's
I mean
I'm
that makes
obsessed.
sense. That
Yeah.
in that moment that makes sense as far as like let's in Ragnarok when he made his own play at the very beginning, like he was trying to make it as if just to make it so everybody of Asgard loved him, you know, like
Yeah, the whole play. Yeah,
right,
exactly.
right, you know,
Exactly. And
because
I think the
he never
narcissism,
got
it just
that.
starts from
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
Mhm,
Lord.
mhm.
And I love that the episode that the just the series overall took such a like introspective like approach. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously it also connects to the wider MCU in its entirety, but also
Mm-hmm.
just kind of diving in deeper to this one character, similar to how I think Iron Man 3 did really similar to with Tony Stark, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
post the events of Avengers, New York, all of that, and instead
Yeah.
of really going big and wide, they strip him down to just the man
Right.
and all. And I think the MCU just does such a great job of doing that.
Yeah.
Is finding ways for us to truly connect with these individuals, because I think all of us can think of a time where we had issues with our identity or just understanding what it is that we really want, and
Yeah.
we kind of go and do these self-destructive things, and this is just a much higher
Yeah.
scale.
Mm-hmm. All right. So I'm gonna shift gears just real quick. Say towards the end of episode 5. Because right now the plan is to somehow get past the Eliath, the smoke dog, the smoke beast,
Yes.
the smoke monster, and we got to see, uh, I guess, old Loki conjure up Asgard as some defense to kind of give them some times. But I thought that was pretty cool. You know, he was able to build the own city, the whole city with his magic. But the interesting part from that scene was because their plan was to um, what were they gonna do to the smoke thing? What was Sylvie trying to do? I totally forgot. I'm drawing a blank. She was trying to help me out, Grace. Uh,
When she was trying to like penetrate essentially the guard dog's like memories and see, is
right.
that what you're talking about?
Do you
Yeah.
know the word that she used? Like I don't want to say conjure or like she. Either way.
You're just referring to her abilities,
Right,
right? Just
right,
like her
right.
mind control abilities. Yeah.
Right. So with that, and she used the Loki that we know. So in that moment, does he now know how to do that? To cast that type of spell, I guess.
Well, Sylvie teaches them how to do it, right? And I think they, in the moment when they hold hands, I don't think I think that's just kind of a symbol of them using both of their abilities to use that magic on something so grand, right, Elias?
Well,
Um,
let me stop you right there because Sylvie didn't teach him. Like he was just like, "How do I do it?" And then she was like, and I'm like, how does he know? You know what I'm saying?
you know something, I feel like to me it just kind of makes sense because it's not like this isn't a magic we don't see him do in earlier films because he does it to Valkyrie and Ragnarok, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we know that like down the line Loki would have learned this regardless, and it's something he's always had the ability to do.
Yeah.
And it's something that he had seen her do multiple times that she explains softly, right? Not to great detail, right? We see it in the episode where they're on Lamentus. My You know what I'm talking about, episode 3. When they're on the planet and he's like, how does it work? And like, oh, like he asks if she's creating that, but she talks about
Right.
how she can't really, it's she works with what she's got. So
Mm-hmm.
it's for me it makes sense. It wasn't too out there. And especially because we've seen him do it before. So I think she was just kind of a bridge to tapping something he already had inside him. But I'm also more like, yeah, that makes sense,
Yeah.
mystical. But you're like, I want it explained.
Yeah. Like it was just like a crash course that wasn't even shown. It was like they held hands and then they got the job done. So I was just like, how did he know how to do it? Because I was just going to assume that somehow with them holding hands that she was somehow channeling her abilities through him to combine their powers to take care of the smoke dog or whatever. You know what I'm saying?
I feel like she gave him a nudge. Like in my eyes, it's like, it's like when your parents throw you in the pool and say swim,
Right.
or they let go of the bicycle when you're like pedaling. Like I feel like it's like, okay, they know you got it. You just
Mm-hmm.
need that like nudge of like feeling like someone's there on that journey with you. And then
Yeah.
before you know it, you're on your own, like doing
Mm-hmm.
it. Cause it's obviously coming from him. Right. And I think
Right.
maybe like that whole channeling event, maybe I feel like she maybe just helped unlock it.
Yeah.
And from there, like him pushing through. Um, but it's not, I like that he did learn how to use it in episode 5 because
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this is going to line up into him maybe using it down the road in season 2
Mm-hmm.
as he's trying to fix Sylvie's mess and all that
Right.
kind of stuff. So
Right.
I think it opens up a lot of opportunity because although we did see him do it in Ragnarok to Valkyrie, it obviously wasn't to the extent of this, right? They're doing
Right.
it
That
to
wasn't like
Elias.
say yeah
Yeah.
like that wasn't a sense of control to Valkyrie. It was just more so I guess to penetrate her mind and see the memories. Like he didn't really use her like to go like to get under his control because the only time he really put anybody under control is when he had the Mind Stone. And that aside, all we really knew Loki to do was, I guess, yeah, uh, see inside someone's mind, but not really twist and turn and use their mind however they please without the help of something
Actually,
else.
let me stop you right there. He did also do it to Odin. Remember, he like
All
penetrated his
right.
mind. That's how he took over as and took his
Yeah.
place as Odin, right? And sent him
Mm,
to like
you got me.
this home. Yeah.
Yep.
um
Mm-hmm.
the scene coming to mind right now is just when they arrived to the I guess the old people's home, and they're like,
Mm-hmm.
I swear I left him right here.
Right. Right.
And it's all in like ruin. But yeah, so he's done it before, and he did it to Odin, right? Like this, Odin's not, not to like say anything bad about Valkyrie because she's obviously powerful and awesome, and
Mm-hmm.
we're gonna see more of her in Love the Thunder.
Mm-hmm.
But this is Odin, right? Like
Yeah.
he's like the big dude. So like I feel like that does show the potential to or his strength, and I think them just combining their forces together was enough for them to take down Elias.
But would let me pose the question of like, say, would you say that uh was that more so him putting um Odin under an illusion versus a mind control? Because what Sylvie does, I would assume, is more so mind control because as we see in episode 2 of the season, she's controlling everybody in that uh, I'm gonna call it a Walmart, just by touch, you know. So it wasn't necessarily like she was putting them in an illusion. She was actually able to like take over their whole body and just talk to Loki through them. You know what I'm saying?
And that's right. We haven't seen Loki do that, but in terms of just being able to control an individual, not necessarily take their form the way that Sylvie did,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, which he can do, but he does that via illusion, not necessarily like, going into their body and such.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still, I would still categorize it as he's mind controlling them via illusion, potentially, right? Like using, I mean, who knows how he did it with Odin? Like, did he would have had to use his own memories to create that, right?
Right.
If we're
Right.
going off of the rules that they're going, that they're creating here.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's the same. I think it's the same. I think
Okay.
it's the same
Okay.
line of power, maybe just a different, obviously different scheme.
Okay. All right. So.
Oh, I dropped something. Hold on. Let me drop this really quickly. Being that we saw Sylvie and Loki team together to be able to basically take down Elias, I feel like maybe they'll use something similar down the road to then revert the TVA back to what it was, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe not back to what it was, but something that's much better of a choice. So I don't
Okay.
know. Yeah, well, I'll dive back into that once we get to episode 6 and start talking about Kang and all that.
Oh no, we're here right now because as far as
We're here. Let's do
where
it.
as far as where I want to go, I'd like to start by saying this series has now made it official, or officially opened the gates to the the multiverse of madness. Okay,
Oh
because
Lord, yes.
once we saw all of those branches, not like on the screen at the TVA, but like the actual branches of the timeline, I was looking at it and I was like, that's the multiverse of madness right there because I have no idea how they're gonna put all of that back together into like one stream of time. You know what I'm saying? It was just so much, and I'm super excited that it actually came down to this because everybody, I guess, was speculating that somehow it was going to get down to Wanda somehow creating it or Doctor Strange opening the doors or something like that. But at the end of the day, it was this show that brought the multiverse into play. So, give us your thoughts on that.
First of all, Doctor Strange, God bless his heart. He's gonna have to just clean up all this mess.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's well, we kind of had the idea that this would set up the idea of the multiverse, and there was a
Mm-hmm.
lot of different things I saw online that I'd like to agree with. Is that maybe this event also lines up with where Wanda hears her children at the end of
Mm,
WandaVision,
mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And as she's learning more about the what's
Dark
the book's name? Yeah, you know it like this. Um, and I feel like that really does open up with her maybe trying to get her kids from a different timeline to bring
Yeah.
it into her timeline, something like that.
Yeah.
Maybe that's how we see things, start off in Multiverse of Madness. Doctor Strange
Mm-hmm.
is like, no, because apparently she just can't be happy. That's essentially the theme of the comics is no one wants Wanda to be happy. Um, but it was a really really great visual to see the timeline branch off, like you said,
Mm-hmm.
in I guess like actuality, like versus seeing it on a screen, right?
Yeah.
That was really nice. And
Mm-hmm.
I think the introduction to this episode was just so good on so many different levels. Right, like the new
What?
Marvel intro
Oh yeah, I was
with
about to say
the
remind me what the intro, but you're actually talking about like the MCU like intro that they
yeah
normally
like
have, but now like with all the quotes and stuff.
Yeah, and it's such a good, like, I think, segue into connecting this into like, okay, this is what really sets up the MCU. This is what going to set
Mm-hmm.
up all the other films that we're going to see this year, next year, and the year after.
Mm-hmm.
And you hear just everybody. You hear Natasha, Thor, T'Challa. You hear Cap, Ant Man,
Mm-hmm.
everybody just spitting out lines, and me in tears in the corner.
Right.
Um, it, so good. Like, it's just this show is doing wonders.
And this
I'm
this
happy.
was the first time we saw, I guess, the Marvel intro throughout the whole series, right? Like we never saw it
Oh
in
yes.
episodes 1 through 5. This was they show it in the last episode of the season. I think that's I don't know. It was hilarious to me. Not hilarious because it was good, but all in all, like it wasn't until episode 6 where they actually put the intro that they put at the beginning of every single movie, show that they come out with. So yeah, I definitely enjoyed that for sure.
It ties in so well. It ties in
Mm-hmm.
so well with just that connecting the shows into the movies that we're going to see on the big screen. Because I
Mm.
think if you don't watch the shows and you go see the movies, I think you're going to be missing out a huge chunk of background.
Yeah.
And this is obviously just a ploy by like Disney and Marvel for us to buy more things. It's fine. I'm all for it. They've
Yeah.
already captured me. I'm here. It's
Yeah.
fine.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's really chilling. And I loved how it then transitioned into you see the two like black holes, and then it kind of shifts into the end of the void, and you see like the
Right.
citadel, and then that's where they enter, and you see all it's very well done.
Definitely. Definitely. So, um, episode 6 starts off. They make it to the Citadel, and from jump, because we didn't see who the main antagonist was until later in the episode, but initially when they walk in the door, I see Miss Minutes, and I was just like, are they really about to make her the bad guy
Oh my
of the
god, I
whole?
know. Yes. I and she has this like scary face. I was rewatching the episode, and when she pops up, she has this face saying like, "Yeah, I'm behind all of this," and it's just like,
Right.
"Just kidding." I continue.
Right, because she, I guess, had been playing dumb like throughout the whole series at the TVA, but then like when I saw her once they walked inside, I was like, no, because somebody like of course online people were saying she's the villain, so I was like, no, they can't let it, they can't let her be the villain of the whole timeline of the sacred timeline or whatnot. But um, with that being said, I was happy to see because after episode 4, where we saw the whole timekeepers and the robotic timekeepers and everything like that, I wasn't expecting, like I mentioned before, I wasn't expecting to see the actor Jonathan Majors at all. Like I wasn't expecting to see him until Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, because he's playing Kang in that movie. So Miss Minutes goes by, they continue, and then here comes Jonathan Majors, aka Kang the Conqueror. Okay, he didn't go by Kang. They didn't quote unquote put it as Kang in the episode, but I'm just excited to say the name and excited to see him finally pop up. You know.
Yes, I think he did it so well. Yeah, King the Conqueror. What's the other one? The He Who
It's
Remains. All
right,
that.
right.
It's just, I think that after what having gone through the whole what's the best way to phrase it? Psychological frustration of
Mhm.
WandaVision. I think a
Mhm.
lot of us were very scared to be like, yeah, it's King, because everything is
Right.
pointing to King.
Right.
But then it was very similar with WandaVision, where everything was pointing to Mephisto. In the comics,
Mhm.
Mephisto is a really big part of Wanda's just kind of storyline throughout the comics.
Yeah.
And so at this point, we were just kind of like, just anxiety provoking. We're honestly traumatized by Disney and Marvel at this point. Like they did this to us
I'm
because
gonna
everything was pointing
and
to him.
I'm gonna let them continue to do it to me. You know what I'm saying? They
We
got me. They have me, and I don't know. Like I will continue to take all of this emotional abuse that they're putting us
It's a
through. You
cycle.
know?
It's a cycle, man. All the clues are pointing to him, right? Just with Renslayer alone, Alioth, Renslayer's number 823, which is their appearance in the comics, right?
Mhm.
Avengers 23.
Mhm.
And then when we saw in episode 5, the first glimpse, actually, I think you see it at the end of episode 4, right? The first glimpse where people thought it was potentially the Avengers Tower, but it was
Mhm.
actually Kang Enterprises Kang, right?
Oh,
Tower. So it was
I
there's so
have to
many
rewatch
clues.
that. I didn't know that. I didn't see that.
Yes. The end of episode 4 when we see like a snippet of right what Loki
Right.
sees, right? The
Right.
other Lokis just kind of
Mhm.
towering over him, and you kind of have the different remnants of timelines that I guess were considered like void
Right.
were in the background. It's on like the right side where something appears to be the Avengers Tower.
Right.
In the comics, Tony Stark sells the Avengers Tower to Mr. Griffin, which is essentially like an alias for King the Conqueror, and they turn it into Kang, Qeng
Mhm.
Tower, and that's what you see on there when you like. There was a lot of pictures on online of that zoomed in. So
I'm
so
gonna
many
have
little
to
clues.
rewatch that honestly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so many different clues, and I do love that it wasn't the way WandaVision did it, where it's like everything led to this, and then it was absolutely none of that, right?
Yeah.
Like none of it.
Mhm.
This, right? It is King the Conqueror, but
Mhm.
not really.
No.
It's a variant of King the Conqueror who
Mhm.
is kind of like, yo, this is the only solution I came up with.
Yeah.
Help me out, guys. And then, but I have a couple theories on that too, just because I'm not fully convinced, and maybe I
Yeah.
just became a little Loki-esque and
Uh
like
huh.
not trusting people
Mhm.
anymore with this, and also with everything that Marvel's done.
Speaking of
But
like say with you saying not trusting it, like I like the whole dialogue where it was just Sylvie and Loki. They're like, you're lying, you're lying, you're lying. Like it was like everything that he was saying, it was just like, you're lying. So
false.
nobody trusts this guy at all, you know. So like say when it came down to before you theorize, because I know you got your theories, but I want to piggyback off of my theory from the last the last episode from us too. Okay, it was gonna happen. I
Yes.
was gonna bring it up. I wanted to just throw it out there that I wasn't completely wrong. Okay, I was somewhat on the right path. I wouldn't say I was right, but like say initially 2 weeks ago when I mentioned like I was saying it could have been like beyond Doctor Strange. It could have been actually been like say somebody from the I guess like a group of people from the future that eventually made the TVA. Which when they were talking to Kang in the office, I just found it interesting to say that to bring up the fact that there was a variant of himself from the 31st century. So from there, I'm going to assume that every single Kang is from the 31st century. Because I feel like everybody and their variants, they pretty much exist around the same timeline in the sacred timeline. So
Hmm.
every Kang is from the future, right?
Yes.
And with that being said, he brought up the fact that each of them developed their own technology in discovering the whole the universe of time or whatnot, and they kept helping each other make it better. You know, making each universe better and taking things from different universes. You know, so with that, I I theorized that it was a team of Sorcerer Supremes, which in actuality, I believe when we spoke before, we don't know. He may very well be a Sorcerer Supreme. We don't know. That could be another theory. That could be some bullshit. Who knows? But all in all, it comes to show that um, a I don't well I can't really tell because I don't know him to be dangerous because I didn't really read him in the comic books, but as far as what I know, I feel like I understand him to be like super smart, and by that super smart, like on some like Tony Stark, but like multiplied, you know. Um, and he developed a technology to go between universes and eventually create the TVA. Because I was curious as far how the TVA technology came to play, and that started from episode 1. I was like, how is everything? How are they able to just travel through time like it's nothing with their devices, with their little iPhones or whatnot, you know? So um,
Mhm.
I liked how they kind of tied it together and kind of answered all of my questions in, I guess, the first few minutes of their dialogue.
Repeat that very last part because you kind of cut out.
Oh, I was just saying that he answered the questions like within the first few minutes of the dialogue that they have as far as how the TVA was created with the technology that he made.
Yes, yeah. And I think it's kind of a play on what we first saw Miss Minutes explain of like what the TVA is. Like it wasn't fully a lie, right?
Mm-hmm.
Having had all these overlapping multiverses became a problem, so then the TVA was created to remove that problem.
Mm-hmm.
Um there's in terms of like, well, were you wrong, were you right? It was, we were talking earlier this week about
Mm-hmm.
how they haven't really confirmed what kind of being he is,
Mm-hmm.
right? So they might very well still be like, hey, in this MCU he is a what, fill in my blank, I'm spacing.
Well, he's right now. He seems pretty human, low key. So
Oh, he came off very human. That's why I feel like there's so much opportunity for them to still be like, okay, well, he is what's the word? What's Doctor Strange? Help me out here.
Sorcerer Supreme.
A sorcerer, maybe not even like sorcerer supreme, but just a sorcerer, right?
Okay.
Um, so they can still do a lot with his character. We've only really been introduced to him as a villain at the very end because we
Mm-hmm.
met him kind of very human like,
Mm-hmm.
right? He was very kind of quirky, um, kind of not to be taken seriously a little
Right.
bit. But he also has a lot to do in the comics with Doctor Doom's arc and series and things that, and I know that down the road, Fantastic Four is gonna be a thing, so it
Mm-hmm.
can kind of segue into that. And I believe I think Fantastic Four is supposed to come at the very tail end of this stage of the MCU. So I
Mm-hmm.
think could still be some way of like potentially setting up even the next phase that follows. But I
Well,
guess we'll find out in 10 years.
can you elaborate just a little bit more on what kind of being is Kang in the comics?
I know that they clarify pretty well like what kind of being he is specifically in the comics.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember it off the top of my
Okay.
head.
Okay.
Um, but let me see. I just looked it up. But he has a lot of different kinds of incarnations. Part of his powers are time travel. I think
Mm-hmm.
in the how we've seen the TVA, it's a lot more like technology based, right? With the
Mm-hmm.
way that they do the pruning,
Right.
all that stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of room for them to kind of specify how this all works. Like, okay, this is a dude who realized there's a lot of conflict with having all these multiverses, but he
Mm-hmm.
obviously must have some type of power to do something about it.
Right.
And they haven't defined it specifically on how the MCU is going to adapt it, and so who knows if it's going to be directly to how the comics lay it out because
Mm-hmm.
they've changed a lot of things,
Oh,
especially
for
for I
sure.
think especially this what's this phase, which I like because it kind of keeps us on our toes. It keeps us anxious. I'm losing hair.
But see, with that,
It,
like, I honestly like I was expecting him to like when the door opened this episode, I was expecting him to be in blue makeup just from what I've seen as far as like pictures from comics. Like he looks like a blue being, but they kept him in his regular, just is like a normal black dude, just a weird ass black guy. You know,
Well, you know
so
something, when you first see him appear, well, no, let me rephrase that. Not when you first see him appear, but at one point, he's seen under this hue of blue lighting to kind of mimic how we see him in the comics.
mm-hmm.
His clothing does resemble that of Immortus, which is a variation of King the Conqueror.
Okay.
So there are some like tie-ins to how we see him in the comics, but I think now that he is King the Conqueror, right? Not
Mm-hmm.
just this like how you said, not this just black dude that we see kind
Right,
of
right,
like fly
right,
up
right.
on the scene.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think we're going to maybe see him in his traditional costume. I think at this point, because we only saw him statue wise, and obviously that was like a gray statue. So who knows? Like
Yeah.
I think we will see him in that. I think you're talking about like little promo things that we've seen with that actor in King the Conqueror.
Right. No, like
Like
say, yeah,
get up,
I've
yeah.
seen, yeah, I've seen that promo because I follow. Do you know of the artist Boss Logic on Instagram?
Not off the top of my head,
Okay.
no.
Well, Boss Logic, I think I've been following him for maybe like 2 or 3 years, and he's just a crazy graphic artist that Marvel has actually contracted him like to do like some of their posters as of recently or whatnot, and like he actually did one with like Jonathan Majors in Blueface or whatnot. And then when I first saw that, I went back to actually like I went to Google and actually I wanted to see what Kang looked like in the comics, and that's where I got the idea to where he was actually blue. You know, so I don't know. I
Yeah,
just thought it was
and
interesting as far as the route that they took. You know.
And I think kind of going back to what we are talking about, the different variations of Loki and how they all look different, it does track that a different version of Kang might resemble more of what we see in the comics. So I think
Right.
that all tracks.
Yeah.
I think that really tracks.
Okay. All right, so it's like I know we're coming short on time, and if you have some theories, uh, go ahead and throw some out. I have one question I do want to pose to you. I have it written down. I'm ready whenever you are. But if you want to throw out some theories as far as where Loki or the MCU can go from here, go ahead. This is your time to shine.
Going back to King, since we were just talking about him, so a lot of things that were happening on screen with the way he was talking about, hey, do you guys want the job, or you can kill me, and other variations of me are gonna come out and like mess things up.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that was so. It just feels manipulative. It doesn't sit fully well
Mm-hmm.
with me, and just like his little smirks and smiles and the way that he speaks, it's almost like he's trying to instigate this rift between Loki and Sylvie.
Mm.
Um, and there's a certain part where he tells, I don't know if I forget who he was referring to. I think he was talking to Sylvie in reference to Loki, like, oh, can you really trust this guy?
Mm-hmm.
You know? And it's almost like he wanted it to happen because right when she stabs him, he
Mm-hmm.
has this smirk and he just says, I'll see you later.
Right.
So I feel like there has to be more to it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, but I feel like some of that had to be intentional. Like maybe he was just tired because he was saying like this is a job for the young, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe he's like, you know what? Let's just let things happen. Like just take me out. Let's just see what the other guys do. You know,
Yeah.
new under new management, TV under new management.
Right.
Um, at the something that really did break my heart is the scene where Loki is just fully vulnerable. He's dropped his
His sword.
dagger,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, his dagger post this incredible fight scene with I've rewatched it like 3 times because
Mm-hmm.
the choreography on that was
It
so
was.
good.
It was badass.
Um oh, so great. So many great little snippets. And he just kind of throws it down and talks about how he's like, I don't want to hurt you.
Right.
I'm not this person anymore. And this is the part where I was so worried that at some point in that part he was going to just revert back to that state of like
Mm-hmm.
illusion because it's a defense mechanism, right?
Right.
It's almost like he doesn't want to be rejected, so he then creates the rift himself and separates it so he can't, you know? And I
Mm-hmm.
think he kind of stood his ground, and it's a really good, I think, transition to like I think this Loki's done with the illusions
Yeah.
for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's set in being, like
Good,
I
actually.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm set in being, true to what's inside. Like I don't want to be alone.
Right.
You're awesome. I
Right.
don't want anything to happen to you. And then obviously, we see Sylvie betrays him, which is in true Loki fashion,
Right.
right? She betrays him, which I think it's just because she still has more developing to do, right? Their base is still there. They still have a very similar like goal in terms of like what they want, and I think this is just something that her path had to lean on because she was so set on revenge, 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 revenge.
Mm-hmm.
And so whatever consequence that led to, she didn't really care. And obviously she thought um that Kang was lying, but seeing Loki at the very end after being pushed out of the void, and he goes to talk to Mobius,
Mm-hmm.
and then in the middle of a sentence you see that switch of like they're just like, we don't know who you are, and
Right.
then he turns and sees the new version of the TVA.
Mm-hmm.
That was chilling
Yeah.
to see that it just transitioned so quickly. I thought for some reason I was thinking we'd see some battle happen with like the other kings coming in, but it was so quick, and I think it was even scarier that way because it was so fast and jarring. Like we thought we had more time.
Well, see, and
um
in that moment, like once we got the idea that Mobius has no idea who Loki is, then it's clear that uh, Sylvie sent Loki to the wrong universe. This is an alternate universe, and say currently, I would say the TVA that we know was just one universe to where uh, a Kang created the timekeepers. But then once all of these branches started branching apart, and now I'm assuming now there's infinite amounts of TVAs, and now the TVA that the Loki that we know, he's at a point to where there were no such timekeepers, and Kang is the head of that universe, if that makes sense.
Oh, almost like the variants of King, just like, all right, we
Right.
each have our own
Right.
TVA. This is
Exactly.
your domain.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of like the idea. I was still under the idea that it was just one TVA, and then I
Mm-hmm.
was like, okay, but I'm assuming that the King the Conqueror, right, the full
Mm-hmm.
like that version of King is the one who ended up being victorious and now is in charge of the TVA
Right.
one unit. But
Mm-hmm.
I like the idea you're proposing just because that sounds funny to me. Like they just came into consensus, like, all
Yeah.
right, this is your area, this is
Mm-hmm.
mine. Um, there's a lot of different things that ways that could branch out because
Yeah.
we didn't see. I refuse. I've never learned her name just because I don't like her. But Renslayer,
Stop
her
hating.
first name I can't
Just
pronounce it.
stop
I hate her so
hating.
much. I don't like her. The betrayal, the
Oh man.
deception, the manipulation. From the beginning, I'm like, she doesn't rub me the right way. But
Right.
we don't see her at the very end, right? The last time we see her was when she steps out of like the little, she
Right. She
escapes
got a
essentially
message
before all this
from Kang.
happens.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So it's, she might be a key to the downfall.
Yeah.
I know she's a love interest of King, but I know that it's kind of like I don't want to say like a forced relationship, but I think it initiated that way. She might be part of the downfall of King.
Yeah. Like say
I
with that, like I don't know, you saying that it just sparked the idea of, I she could, even though she got a message that we don't know what the message is, she could somehow uh be a part of bringing the universes back together, because
Yes.
all in all, Miss Minutes says, "Here's this," because Kang thinks that this would be better, and her mission is all about keeping the sacred timeline and keeping the idea of, like, say when she had uh, her one on one with the other hunter. She was like, regardless if they were robots, like I'm still gonna keep the idea of the TVA and keeping the whole sacred timeline intact. So I feel like with what you just said, that there's a chance that she is in actuality going to help bring the timelines back into one.
Yes. And then on that same note, let's just assume that what we heard from, the Kang that we met,
Yeah.
let's just assume that that's all genuine, right? He was like, "Hey guys, can you take over? Because if you don't and I die, this version of me is going to come and you're not going to like it." Let's just say
Mm-hmm.
all that was genuine.
Yeah.
Maybe he, as kind of a safeguard, like, he's dealing with Loki's, their thing is betrayal, as
Mm-hmm.
a safeguard, maybe what information he gave to Renslayer was a way for them to be able to reset that, almost like an insurance in the
Yeah.
case that these to Loki's don't take the new position as,
Mm-hmm.
the heads of the TVA, Renslayers might back up with this information that might be crucial to the, bringing down
Yeah.
Kang,
Yeah. Yeah.
the Conqueror. I had one last little thing.
Mm-hmm.
There's another tie that I had, but I lost it. It's totally fine. Continue on.
Okay. Well, the last posing question that I have for you, not just for you, but just for the internet and for any viewers that are watching. So let's say if it came down to it, with all of these infinite branches, and people are already kind of speculating that the title of the next Spider-Man is No Way Home. Do you think that there's a chance that Peter gets lost in the multiverse?
Yes. You know that I'm like die hard on and set on the fact that this is going to be a obviously we know it's going to be part of the multiverse because we see different villains from different Spider-Man movies come
Mm-hmm.
into one. So we know this is going to have a play on the multiverse. I'm convinced
Mm-hmm.
he's going to be involved with other Spider-Man. So who knows, maybe he falls into one of their timelines and is trying to get back home, and in the process of trying to get back home they end up in a different guy's timeline.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I really really hope that this is something that they continue, and hoping that they still continue that whole Sony Marvel Spider-Man relationship so we can see more films in the future, is because
Mm-hmm.
the Spideyverse comic book series, like the
Mm-hmm.
storyline, is
Mm-hmm.
so good. It is so good, and I want to see that come into fruition. It's the same way I felt about Wanda's storyline in the comics, which I never thought we'd see in the MCU, because I was like, oh, that's so far fetched. But at
Yeah.
this point,
Yeah. Yeah.
anything is possible. So I'm
Okay.
putting all of my energy on that. So possibly, and I think there's been a lot of rumors. I don't know if it's like a confirmed thing, but I think Doctor Strange is supposed to be involved, right, in like some
Yeah.
way. So
Mm-hmm.
I feel like all of that makes sense. It makes more sense for that to be the case than it for it to not, because
Yeah.
everything's leading in that direction. And I think
Mm-hmm.
because everyone's kind of quiet about it or giving little smirk like looks whenever they're asked, right? And by that I'm referring to Tobey Maguire, and
Right.
also the I think I forget from what country he's from, but there's an actor who used to voice, I think it was Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man movies, in the language, right, in the translation, and he was
Uh-huh.
asked, I think earlier this week, about like, oh, like, have you been like, do you know anything? And again, little smirk. I'm like, I'm convinced. I'm
Mm.
so convinced.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that's everything that I have. Could you or did you find the thing that you were looking for?
No, it's gone. It's totally fine.
Okay. All right.
But
So
there'll definitely be more talk. We're gonna get another season, which is great. So this
definitely.
isn't the last that we'll hear about, Loki, King, Sylvie, all of this. And so
Mm-hmm.
we're gonna be doing this for years to come. It's great.
And we posted the ad online, but we will be seeing you again on the 30th, correct?
That is correct. So on the 30th, Friday the 30th, 3 to 4, we'll be breaking down Black Widow. So for those of you who have not seen the movie just yet, make sure to watch it so you can join us and help break that down, and join the conversation. Yes, I will
Yeah.
be back on the 30th.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Are we gonna get like a video, or like or am I just gonna be talking to your face?
You should know. So that I can keep my power, I'm just going to do this. So you guys are at my mercy. I will be live and in person,
Awesome.
all that. So that is the
Awesome.
plan as of now. So yeah, we will see you guys on the 30th. And we'll talk Black Widow, possibly the what if, because we got a new
Yeah.
trailer
Yeah.
recently. We
Yeah.
weren't able to break that down. But
Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of juicy things we got coming up. So
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, young Grace, again, I appreciate you for coming in. This is actually, I guess, the first official episode with our first official name. You know what I'm saying, the comic cinematic universe, the CCU, with Chill and Grace. So, thank you always. You're awesome. I appreciate you. And yeah, I believe that's everything. That's all we got for y'all. So, uh, tune in on the 30th, and we'll be back with Black Widow. All right, Grace, I will talk to you later.
sounds great. Talk to you guys. Thanks.
All
Bye.
right, bye. I keep hitting that wrong button. I keep hitting that Xbox. It's like I want to play. It's like I want to play, but my subconscious is like, no, you're gonna play. So keep hitting that button to go to Call of Duty. But all in all, that was an awesome episode. I'm glad we got a chance to break down Loki, and yeah, we will be breaking down Black Widow. We both saw it, and I was kind of ready to break it down this this episode, but we'll break it down as far as what we thought of the movie. I had some ideas as far as what I saw and how it fit in between. Because it was after Civil War and before Infinity War. So I had a few thoughts on there, but we will go over that when the time comes. And tune in on Monday. I'll be back. Call of Duty back on it. And like, I don't know if y'all checked it out yesterday, but I did try to play that new zombie. I went solo in to that new zombie map. I may try again a little later. Probably not solos, maybe with whoever's online. Yeah, thank you all again for tuning in. And yeah, I'll see you all Monday. Same time, same place. Twitch.tv// chill from VA. And yeah, holler at y'all.